We're now going to have a panel session with Jan from HoloMe, Ryan from MXR, and Adrianna from the Fabricant. So the Fabricant have not pitched today, but they were actually part of our Batch 6 accelerator. However, much has changed even since they graduated from our accelerator in December 2019. So I wanted to invite Adrianna to give us a quick update on everything that's been going on with the Fabricant over the past 6 months and what they have planned for the rest of 2020. And then we'll dive into some questions with the three of them.
So guys, yeah, nice to meet you again. We have been in the last cohort of Fashion for Good as the Fabricant. Some of you might know us, but we thought it was a good opportunity to just refresh where we are, as a lot has changed in the last couple of months. As the Fabricant, we are a digital fashion house, waste nothing but data and exploit nothing but imagination. And with that in mind, we explore the world of 3D fashion. Next slide, please. And what is that world of 3D? Basically, we create experience for brands and with brands that are of passive nature, where, for example, we are developing things that people watch, their brand campaigns, their films and edits of brand stories. But we also can do with 3D's interactive experience that where the user and the viewer is also interacting with it, like the example here, which is a pop-up digital store or AR experience, where, as it was showed by other startups recently. And then the last step of these 3D worlds is what we call immersive experience, where the user and the brand fan is not only watching and interacting, but is actually directing and being the one deciding which story he or she is going to do with the brand. And that is what we started more and more exploring. And why we started exploring it is because we really believe that there is a new business model for the fashion industry, and a business model that actually already exists for quite some time in the gaming space. And we're bringing right now to fashion. And this is our beta platform, where you come in and you develop your digital avatar, which we're going to show in a minute, where brands can create their collections and have a special dedicated space curated for their own brand needs. And users come and build that DigiSapien, that digital twin. In the beta, they didn't have hair, which was a shame. But as you can see, you come into an environment where you can play with the background, you can change clothes, and at the end of the day, you create a piece of digital asset that share in social media. And in the beta, we were expecting, because it's it's still in a prototype version, we were a bit cautious of what would be the results, but we were very, very excited about what users told us. 52% of them would share their personal style in social media. So there is an enormous interest for people to actually play more with their style options and be more playful in general with fashion. They're willing to pay at 64% to actually be part of it and pay for digital garments. And 86% would return as soon as there is hair available and more brands are part of it. And that access to brands that maybe they wouldn't have access in real life, or more diversity of styles, is a big trigger for them to come back. With those results, we continue developing the platform, and we are going to be launching in November this year commercially. So here's for you all to remind about digital fashion as a great opportunity for the industry. And whoever wants to explore this new space, just feel free to contact me later on. Thank you.
Thanks. I downloaded the Leela platform. It was really cool to see, and funny to see your kind of digital self beginning to take shape. So I'd like to invite back Ryan and Jan, as well as Adrianna. So if you could all turn on your videos, that would be great. We talked about these different things, AR, VR, MR. Ryan, perhaps you can start by giving us a quick explanation of what the differences are.
Yeah, sure. There's lots of different acronyms and lots of different ways of saying what it is, but essentially is they all fall under the umbrella known as XR, which is extended realities. Augmented reality, AR, is essentially a digital layer in front of the real world. VR, virtual reality, is like a closed environment digital world, so all 3D or 360 video. And mixed reality is kind of like a new lane, and I think what Leela's doing is probably, that falls under that. But it's kind of like the convergence of AR and VR, but it's yet to be determined what that really is.
So thanks. That's a great kind of quick synopsis. And I think perhaps we can now dive into what we see the future looking like in this space. And maybe we start with Adrianna and then go to Jan and wrap up with Ryan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what do we see? I think we expect the future to be in 2 years from now. And I must say, in this last period of the last 2 months, the future is coming closer and closer, where fashion entertainment is coming together. And we see how much actually consumers, which were already living digital lives, are becoming more and more aware of the possibilities, where indeed concerts, music concerts going online, where fashion shows are going online. And that's, as of suddenly, this new parallel reality is becoming the daily reality. And that is where we see fashion moving from a physical experience more and more into a digital unlimited experience, where everybody can express themselves as they want to be in their digital lives. So to us, there will be a very exciting, emerging and growing new industry where the digital realities will augment the physical reality.
Thanks. Jan, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree, Adrianna. We're seeing the merging of different industries with fashion and retail. The Fortnite concert was a great example of merging of music with gaming. But there's, for example, there's another a business called Network in the US that's absolutely killing it right now with live events, live music, and brand drops. So we are seeing that convergence, and it's well timed, because we are seeing so much more active brand participation in things like social media, because there simply isn't another way to reach your fans intimately, or your customers intimately in the current times. So this merging of industries and leveraging things like music and brand ambassadors for the sale of fashion and retail is going to become kind of the new norm. And if you're not doing it, then you might get left behind, I think.
Yeah. And Ryan, do you want to wrap up?
Yeah. Obviously, I agree with both. I think what's interesting is, like, these new realities have an opportunity to bridge the real world shopping experiences and digital world shopping experiences of today. So if you think about the real world shopping experience, it's pretty perfect, right? It's a closed environment where you can have a one-to-one interaction and completely engage with a brand. But then all of that storytelling and all of that emotional sentiment is lost in digital and scale, because obviously you're looking at a website, and essentially a website is just photographs of products that have been photographed somewhere else in the world. But what emerging realities really offer is, like, to bridge that medium. And, with the convergence of, different types of mediums as well. So, like, as Jan just mentioned, with gaming and film, there's so many different opportunities within that. But we really see it as there's an opportunity in the middle here, which hasn't really been explored yet, which is going to be explored, and which can make that process from, operations to customer pretty perfect.
And I think all of you touched on some of the applications in other industries, looking at the gaming, music, concerts, things like that. What opportunities do you see for fashion brands in this space? Maybe we start with Jan.
Yeah, again, I think, kind of touching on the last thread, the merging is happening, and it's happening at scale now, especially due to coronavirus. So it's a really great opportunity to get more participation in the brand and in kind of the product sale part of the experience. So it's no longer, I saw an advert at a bus station of, XYZ wearing that garment. It's now, we can actually participate in a part of their lives, and the fashion becomes an intrinsic part of bringing the customer closer to the brand through these experiences. There was a major leak by Apple. I say by Apple because sometimes leaks actually come from Apple, when it doesn't seem like they've come from Apple directly, around their AR glasses and their vision for the future of interacting with digital experiences and data. And the whole vision there, and that's echoed by other companies moving into the augmented reality space. Amazon, Snap, Facebook, even Qualcomm. which is their first play into consumer devices. They all see this big new vision of, the new frontier of the internet and the way that we interact with digital technology as being this seamless interaction with you and the real world. So that's moving so much faster than we perceive, and it's almost like they're moving slower so that we as consumers can catch up. But these evolutions in the way that we consume are really at our doorstep right now, and are being pushed heavily from big tech. So businesses will have to adapt.
And Adrianna, have you got anything else you'd like to add on that in terms of the opportunity for brands in this space that we haven't already touched on?
Yeah, I think that there are really three opportunities. One is shifting the perspective with what we call now consumers. And they are consumers because traditionally brands have been sending information for people to consume, and this new generation wants to actually be part of the story and interact with it. So I think creating a much deeper connection with your brand fans and access to youth is required by shifting that paradigm and actually helping them to co-create in these mixed reality zones. The other opportunity that I see is just the practice of digital end-to-end, allowing for a much more sustainable business model, more efficient business model for the industry in general. And I would say the third one is the digital-only space. And we are very passionate about it because it's already an industry of $100 billion. If we only look at digital-only assets sold online through different platforms, whether it's game or digital realities, it is already 100 billion, and it's getting bigger and bigger. So I think the fashion industry should not neglect that consumers have moved on, that actually digital asset ownership is a fact and is only going to grow. And it's time to get into that space seriously.
Yeah, and Ryan, perhaps addressing that and then also thinking about what the sustainability opportunities as well as the commercial opportunities that these different solutions present for brands. If you could also
Most definitely. That. Just to touch on the gaming bit, just wanted to answer that question. What's kind of interesting is within the gaming ecosystem is there's an opportunity for brands to build a culture and a community within those new worlds. And because they've got so many eyeballs, and you mentioned some statistics around the Fortnite play with Travis Scott, is that that really resonates with people. And what's interesting now is like we work and we speak quite closely with like Epic Games, the owner of Fortnite. And we see that what they're trying to do really is, like I say, is bridging that world and using that as a channel to really determine all sorts of things, right? So things like interest around products, what's people's sentiment toward product, what's people's sentiment toward brand. And then it's kind of interesting what dynamic that is that's unfolding. But just to answer your second question on sustainability, we see, I'm relatively new to the fashion industry, so, learning a lot, learning more every day. But what we've seen is that just the amount of stuff that is produced, which doesn't really need to actually be produced. Obviously, everyone knows about that. But if you can just produce one sample, for example, a 3D sample, but that sample is identical to its real world counterpart, you can use that for logistics, communications, operations, marketing. Then all of a sudden you can reduce all of these samples and have a massive impact on, the production footprint. So I think that's really interesting.
And Liana, do you have anything else to add in terms of the sustainability opportunity that these solutions present?
Definitely, yeah. I completely agree. If you're looking at products, reducing the need for as many samples of physical products as possible. Adrianna and both Ryan are perfectly placed in that space to do that. And there's huge opportunity not only for cost savings, but also to create a better environmental footprint. We offer the same opportunity, but for the physical human being, which is attached to those garments in a lot of parts of the process, all the way from creation of garments all the way up to showcasing and selling them.
And we have a question from Christine, which I think actually is well suited for you, Adrianna, to answer, around whether any of you are quantifying the sustainability impact of your technologies.
Yeah, so as part of the Fashion for Good program, we did a quantification, and we are now validating together with a university in the UK. But in our quantification, what we saw is that the production of the physical garment takes 80 kilos of carbon footprint per item, and that is based on a t-shirt, while the production of equivalent product digitally takes a tenth of it in carbon footprint. So we're not taking into account all the data transfer that the physical and the actual production takes. So just purely on materials and logistics. So it's a tenth of the digital garments, a tenth of the physical one in carbon footprint measurement. We'll be validating, and the paper is going to be available in August. We're going to open source publish it because we are very passionate to actually tackle that sustainability angle, and a big believer that that's one of the big solutions to unlock.
And I think we've only got 4 minutes left, so perhaps we can touch on consumer readiness or consumer insights. And for the people on the call who are, I suppose, both consumers and brands who are starting to explore this space, what would be your top tips for kicking this off? And maybe we start with you, Ryan.
I think, you know, for brands, they really need to dream it and then build it. Really think about the exploration around the space. You know, do something little. Look at what a 3D can. I think Adrianna had something on her slide just now, which was really interesting. It was like a one file, endless possibilities. And it's so true. You know, it depends on what you're trying to do and what you're trying to measure, but there's so many different opportunities. I think now is really the time for brands to start exploring those so we can actually generate interesting use cases. Because until that time, it's going to be hard to actually accelerate what we're doing in the world of fashion. But yeah, like we've seen some statistics, and they do vary depending on whether you're looking at furniture or whether you're looking at shoes or bags, et cetera, augmented reality, virtual reality. But in some cases, like we've seen 20 times uplift in engagements. Like that's huge, and that solves all sorts of issues for fashion brands. So yeah, I would say there's a long list of things to look at, but just get started with one.
And Jan, perhaps you can also touch on consumer insights and readiness, and then your top tips for the brands.
Great. I'll be relatively brief with this. It's for a long time, we and most people on this panel were selling the future that we could create now, and it was really perceived as that. Although the current climate makes the future a bit more of a necessity, consumers are willing to do it. And they're doing it en masse, so brands can do it as well. And you know, there's been so much innovation in this space, especially, that has brought down the cost, that's democratized the ability to create content and surface that content very efficiently. That makes this no longer kind of an expensive marketing spend or an exposure project. It can really be integrated into existing budgets and be rolled out efficiently. And we're seeing that more this year than ever, and it's definitely a scalable industry right now, which wasn't previously possible.
Thanks. And Adrianna?
Yeah, I echo the guys, and I think like we were again positive surprised about our beta tests, which are in early stage, but just show the readiness. People are so much looking for new experience with fashion. And really wanting to be part of those narratives rather than just passive consumers of fashion. So I think there are enough evidence to show the consumer readiness for that and adoption. From the brand's point of view, we work with brands all the time, and we always say, embrace the vision and start small. There are so many entry points where 3D can make sense. It's all about what you are trying to achieve. You know, it can be just to improve your efficiency, it can be to improve your sustainability, it can be to create more efficient sellings, like what Ryan was talking about as well. Instead of having physical showrooms, have digital ones. But it can also be because you want to engage differently with your brand fans, because you want to create new narratives, or because you want to go in where they are, which is this digital space where digital only clothing exists. But it's important to understand the entire scope and embrace the journey and start small.